this case is whether or not at the time the various acts were done, the defendant was suffering from a mental disease or defect, and whether or not, and if such a disease or defect existed, whether or not that resulted in the defendant being unable to appreciate the wrongfulness of his conduct or conform his conduct to the standard of the community. Those are the issues that the jury is going to have to be dealing with in this case. I don't feel that we're going to have that much difficulty finding a fair and impartial jury on those issues. In terms of pretrial publicity, I don't think it makes a bit of difference where we select a jury. This morning I got up and I turned on the television and was told I had to leave the house to get to court, courtesy of CNN. I am sure that my wife, who right now is in the state of Florida, probably heard that same heard and saw that same broadcast. And that's what's happened. That, and I can go on and I can tell you stories, which I don't think we have to do here, in terms of the extent to which publicity concerning this case has gone not just throughout this state, not just throughout this country, but throughout the world. I've indeed heard from some people from Europe. So I don't think moving this to some other county is really going to solve that problem. And balancing against the extent of our preparations here against the possible good that could be accomplished by doing it in another county, I just don't think it comes about that way. Mr. McCann, I appreciate what you said, and I agree with what you said, that I think this is a continuing situation. It doesn't start and stop here today. That I'm going to deny the motion. However, that doesn't mean that I might not be forced to revisit it if I'm proved to be wrong. And that's happened once or twice. And that could be the case here. And I certainly intend to keep an open mind on it. But interestingly enough, the greatest difficulty that I've had in a jury selection hasn't involved a criminal case at all. It's involved a civil case. Where it was an asbestos case where cancer was involved, and so many people have been personally affected by cancer that's where they found the difficulty in being fair. So I think we can do it here in Milwaukee, and for that reason I'm denying the motion.
I'd like to just briefly comment on that, and I think the court is entirely accurate in terms of the issue that has been treated by the press to a very great extent has been guilt or innocence. I can recall very few comments about the issue of sanity or not. I think there has not been, one might expect lengthy interviews by various psychiatrists and so on. There have been a few of those, but the publicity to which I've been exposed that I have seen has contained very little that addressed the issue of insanity or not, to my best recollection.
Let me just say for the record, I would like very much to have a Milwaukee jury handle this matter. My problem, as I try to emphasize today, is not all the type of things that Mr. McCann has brought up, although I think they are all germane and I think they're very relevant. The court's ruled on that, and I don't have any problems with the court's ruling. I do, however, think that we do have to consider in voir dire the problem of whether or not people locally want to become a member of a jury that is going to have a long-ranging series of inquiries from not only the media, but I'm sure from friends and neighbors ad infinitum. And that, of course, would be minimized if we were out of the county, and that's really why I made the motion. Thank you.
Anything else to be brought before the court at this time?
There is, Mr. Boyle has adverted to it, some procedural questions raised by the decision to obviate the first portion. He and I have discussed that. We'll continue the discussion. We may need to meet informally with the court.
We have to have a conference fairly shortly. And I think that maybe you gentlemen are going to want to have a conference with some other people in the courtroom before you confer with me, but I wonder if we couldn't make an arrangement either for later this morning or maybe this afternoon sometime that we get together and work out. There are some scheduling and logistical problems that I think I have to consult with you about.
Yes, I understand that. We're speaking of the particular question of how to present a factual basis to the jury before initiating the psychiatric inquiry, and that's really what
I'm
we've
concerned about that problem too.
I think that upon Mr. McCann and I putting our heads together and with the advice and consent of the court, we'll be able to get around that problem. But I'm wondering, Judge, if it's possible we could do it this morning, like about 11 o'clock, we meet with you in your chambers and go over the procedural part.
That's fine.
And now, Your Honor, has the court ordered that Mr. Dahmer remain here for the pendency of this trial?
Well, I had a stipulation submitted to me in that regard. I withheld signing it because I thought we could talk about it today. Mr. Boyle, you are making that request, as I
I
understand.
have to have him here, Judge. It's going to be impossible to put
Mr. McCann, my understanding is you've joined in the request.
I agree with that. If it please the court, I agree. We know that the concern here is by the sheriff. I think realistically that apparently because of added manpower, but I think it's important that he be available until the time of trial, certainly to counsel.
Well, since you joined in the request for change of venue and you lost on that one, I think it's only fair that you should win on this one, so it's so ordered.
Is that going to be the order of the day?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, now the court's going to take a recess. I would like to say to the, because of the number of people in the courtroom, we have to have a little order as far as people exiting the courtroom. The bailiffs are going to give you some directions. The lawyers are going to be taken out the back. The family members here will be taken out the back, and then we will ask the members of the general public to leave. So, court's in recess.
We've been listening and watching pre-trial motions for accused serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. You see him here leaving Judge Lawrence Graham's courtroom. He is attired in prison fatigues. When he comes back to the courtroom for his trial on January 27th, we are told that he will be wearing civilian clothes. You see members of the audience, many of them family members of victims, are now getting ready to leave the courtroom. They have been sitting here, as you have been, watching the procedure. It lasted about an hour and 10 minutes. Now, for about 30 minutes of that,